Hi there, Brian. Welcome to the show. The show is going out now live. Is Satanism more prevalent in the world than it has been in the past? Go ahead, Brian, and just educate us on what you believe is happening.
Okay, I think before we start talking about Luciferianism and Satanism, I think that we should really look at who introduced the idea to the New Age movement or the modern world, if you like, about Satanism and darker side, or some saying the lighter side of religious philosophy. Realistically, the expert, in my opinion, on Satanism, on Lucifer, of course, is Steiner. For those of you who don't know, Steiner was born in 1861, died in 1925. He was the Austrian philosopher, social reformer, architect, esotericist. I mean, literally, he was a proper polymath. He was also a Rosicrucian. He worked with the Goethe and Schiller archives in Weimar. He was a very, very clever person. He did join Blavatsky's Theosophical Society, but him and Blavatsky decided that he'd be better off doing his own thing, which he called the Anthroposophical Society, which is quite interesting. During his lifetime, he wrote 30 books and gave thousands of lectures. I mean, literally everything that more or less is New Agey now goes back to either Steiner, Blavatsky, Gurdjieff, or Levi Eliphas. But realistically, in my opinion, Steiner is the one who gives a succinct concentration on what he calls Ahriman or Lucifer and how he describes them. Now, Ahriman goes back to the very first religion. We go right the way back to Mesopotamia. Parts of this religion are still practiced today. I mean, literally, when you see a car called Mazda, Mazda is actually the god of light from the early Mesopotamian religions. So there's something to think about. But what Steiner deduced was Ahriman and Lucifer were two opposing spiritual forces that influence humanity. Interestingly, the actual Lucifer that we understand incarnated on Earth round about 3,000 years ago. Ahriman is much older. The thing with Ahriman is Ahriman lulls humanity into almost a sleeping consciousness. I mean, this is one thing that Gurdjieff was always talking about. He was always telling people to be awake, because the moment that you are asleep, that you are actually being affected by Ahriman. How Ahriman works is it's through materialism, nationalism, and literalism. Literally absorbing information without thinking. He incarnated round about the third millennium. However, if we look at Lucifer, Lucifer tempts human beings towards pride. Now, it's interesting, pride is one of the 7 deadly sins, yet we've now dedicated a whole month to pride. Something to think about. The other side of Lucifer is the imagination and spirituality. And there is a catch to this, that he also teaches people to have a disconnect from the spirit, from the physical world. People who are usually followers of Luciferianism tend to talk about higher levels of consciousness. They don't like the earth, etc., etc. This is really how Lucifer works. He takes you into a higher level of consciousness, but it's one that is not working with the earth. Yeah, I mean, this philosophy goes back to really it's Plato when he's talking about the forms. So the highest level of form within the Platonic logic is probably something like Lucifer. Interestingly, Christ described himself as Lucifer. He called himself the morning star. This literally ties into what Steiner was talking about. He said that the Christ was the manifestation of Luciferic knowledge, but spiritual insight, which sounds contradictory. But as I said, Lucifer's insight is to do with like higher realms and not really to do with the development of the world. It's more to do with the individual. So hence the ego of the individual can really sort of, be mislaid by the Lucifer. Whereas Ahriman, I mean, to get an understanding of Ahriman, you probably have to think about Stalin, okay? Joseph Stalin and the communist regime. He's definitely influenced by Ahriman. I mean, essentially, he told people to not be spiritual. He told people to not have a divine process. And anybody who contradicted that philosophy, literally he killed them. However, the interesting thing is if we read Steiner, he's telling us not to ignore the Luciferian balance, if you like, or the Luciferian influence. He's telling us to find the right balance between the two, but he's also telling us to find the right balance between Luciferian spirituality and Ahrimanic physicality. Ahriman is totally materialistic. And this is what you can see happening now, is that the world is becoming more and more materialistic. And the more materialistic it becomes, the more it leads towards the Ahriman philosophy. Literally, Ahriman represents one-sided materialism, which is disconnected from the spiritual, whereas Luciferianism is spirituality disconnected from humanity. Steiner was saying was that you have to not ignore them, but you have to incorporate them into your life. To reiterate, he saw Christ as the mediator between the demonic Ahriman and the satanic Lucifer, because Ahriman is the unit that crushes to uninform, to the point of the destruction of the individual, whereas the influence of Lucifer is the opposite, where it's boosting the individual at the cost of humanity. That's the philosophy of Steiner. And realistically, having read quite a lot on Lucifer and having read quite a lot on Ahriman, I would say that Rudolf Steiner's philosophy on both these characters is probably correct, because you may have met spiritual people who are just full of ego, my God is bigger than your God, etc., etc. And essentially that's Luciferianism. And if you look round at the world now, that they're introducing philosophies which are totally Ahriman. For example, they want to put chips in people, which will completely dehumanize us, which of course is what Ahriman is about. Whereas Lucifer is more about us trying to meet higher levels of consciousness. Does that make any sense, what I've said?
Yeah, kind of. How does it play out in the Israel-Palestine situation? Because I know I was listening to Mike Bentz the other day, and I know that is all about money and oil and natural supplies, and of course Ukraine and Russia.
I mean that's completely Ahriman. I mean that's like I said, if you think back to like Stalin and the mindless slaughter for economic stability, that's essentially the work of Ahriman. So this is the danger with the Ahriman philosophy. It makes sense, because it tells you don't believe in God, don't believe in spirituality, believe in materialism, because after all, we are material beings. So you can tell a tree by the fruit that it produces. Now,
yeah, I constantly think that people are like that. I mean, people start bleating on about Muslims, how much they hate them. This is a Christian country. And actually, it's not a Christian country, is it? I mean, it's an atheist materialist.
Yeah, exactly. It's completely Ahriman. Yeah, it's a completely Ahriman.
Yeah. So I haven't seen this guy in the Bible anywhere.
Well, no, he's not. He's literally from Mesopotamia. Sort of like, but he's still around, because there's quite a few older religions still practiced from that time. But the whole philosophy of Ahriman has never gone away. In the Bible, they refer to Satan, but we're not talking about Satan. But Satan, realistically, is a creation of God. Don't believe me? Read Job, because essentially he gets one of his angels to be completely nasty to Job. And essentially that's done with God's consent. So, Satan literally means the adversary, whereas Lucifer and Ahriman, they are, if you like, your darker doctrines, which people go to.
Can you tell us about where he was born and his background story?
Who's that?
Ahriman, yeah.
Ahriman. Well, Ahriman is part of the Mesopotamian philosophy. So he was created in the 3rd century, and
right.
Although he was created in the 3rd century, his influence is still today. Like I said, like if you drive down the street and you see a Mazda, I mean that literally translates to the Lord of Light. The Mesopotamian religion is very much alive and well. Not only is it the philosophy of Ahriman, it's also the philosophy of like Mazda, etc., etc.
I've found something just online about Ahriman, written by Paris. Paris Stefano. He says a third spiritual influence working into human and earthly evolution is Ahrimanic. The intention of Ahriman and his hosts is to freeze the earth into complete rigidity so that it will not pass over to the Jupiter, Venus, and Vulcan ages, and to make the man into an entirely earthly being, unindividualized, unfree, and diverse from the normal God's cosmos. The essential Ahrimanic tendency is to materialize, to crystallize, to darken, to silence, to bring living mobile forces into fixed form. In other words, to kill that which is living.
That's exactly what Ahriman is doing. And you can see that now with the advent of, if you like, digitalization. I mean, if you look at countries like China, Australia, and now even England, where they're introducing digital passports, but for inside the country, that means you have to behave how the government tells you to behave, or you will lose credits, or you won't be able to travel, or something, expressing your humanity. You have to be part of the machine. This is very similar to the early Stalinism, because in Stalinism, you were constantly spied on by the KGB, where now you're constantly spied on by the phone. When my grandfather fought in the Second World War to make sure that we were free and we never had the menace of fascism, well, it's here. Fascism is here, but essentially it's in the guise of digitalization and making your life better. And this is very Aramaic, very how it works. So,
Did God create him and there was a fall with Lucifer, or I mean, there doesn't seem to be a little background story.
He just is, and essentially his idea is to pull you into his reality, his world. He's not interested in the human being divine. He's interested in the human being, if you like an ant. Whereas Lucifer is interested in you being divine, but not connected with the world. Lucifer is very much the individual. It's not the masses. And this is the problem with Luciferianism. Yes, it's very enlightening, but what people tend to do is say, oh, wow, I'm really enlightened and you're not. And, you should go away because you're not as enlightened as me, which is, complete garbage. And this is your problem with Luciferianism. If it's not kept in balance, it can be as equally as destructive as Ahriman. They are two sides of the same coin. That they're both equally as destructive if they are not kept in balance. Does that make any sense?
Yes. So, but how can we fight this Ahriman in our own life?
Well, by keeping balance, because essentially you can't fight him. I mean, the point is, at the end of the day, you have to work to pay your bills, and that's part of Ahriman. However, Lucifer will tell you, oh, no, you don't need to do that, because essentially you can become part of the higher level of consciousness and you don't need to work and you don't need money, etc.
Well, Lucifer sounds quite cool then in that case.
Well, not really, because he doesn't really care about the earth. As far as he's concerned, the earth as we understand it can go to hell. But, you have to remember that Jesus called himself Lucifer, the illuminator. He wasn't just balanced in the Luciferian ideal, he was also balanced in the human ideal. It's great to be enlightened, but if you're not helping everybody else, then there's not much point. You become
Yeah, I
very
see you. Yeah.
isolationist. I mean, the point is, humanity at its best is when it's spiritual and it's creative. When it's at its worst is when it's materialistic and destructive. And that's essentially what's happening in Ukraine. I mean, there's wars all over the planet at the moment. It's not just Ukraine and Israel. I mean, there's wars going on in Africa. This is very much what Steiner warned us about with Ahriman. If we look at war from a completely cynical viewpoint, everybody makes money in war. The politicians make money in war. The arms manufacturers make money in war. The soldiers make money in war. The builders make money in war. Everybody makes money, but it's at the cost of human life. But they ignore what they call the collateral damage because they're going to make money. And essentially,
Oh, I know. It's scary. It's all about money and all those dead kids we're seeing in the videos. And now they hooshed the Palestinians into a little tent city. And then they bombed it. I mean, is that about a sacrifice?
Well, no, I mean, essentially, once again, that the philosophy of Ahriman on steroids, because you've got
Tell me,
people.
explain that. Yeah, go on.
Well, you've got people in a tent and their houses have gone. What do you do with them? You want the place where they are, but you don't want them. So obviously you get rid of them. That's very much of Ahriman's philosophy. He doesn't view humans as humans. He views us, if you like, as some kind of weird cattle philosophy. And Stalin was the same. Stalin had a deficit where he had too many people and not enough money. Instead of improving his industry, he just killed the people. This philosophy is not good for humanity on any level.
So would you say that Ahriman is in control right now, is ruling?
I would say so, yeah. I would say that we're less Luciferic and we were definitely more following Ahriman. I mean, Ahriman is all about centralization. Well, that's Ahriman. He doesn't want you to have a voice. He doesn't want you to be able to think. He just wants you to be able to perform like an ant. That was the ethos behind the Soviet Union as well. The individual is sacrificed for the greater good. Quite vile, but essentially.
And what is the Luciferian? What is that? What's that doctrine?
Well, essentially, the Luciferian is all about being enlightened and going towards the light, etc., etc. It doesn't really care about Earth. A great example.
So isn't that a good thing? Well, hang on, why aren't we Luciferians though? I don't really particularly like the Earth. I think it's a place of suffering.
Yeah, but that's what Ahriman would want you to think. Yeah.
Really?
Whereas, yeah. Whereas, like the Luciferians also want you to think that they want you to give up on yourself. Whereas the Christ, if you like, the philosophy behind the Christ, he incorporated those into his life, but still kept it in a spiritual context. Right. I mean, the ultimate nightmare, of course, is the Orwell nightmare, which essentially is Ahriman or Stalin. Whereas Lucifer is opposite to that, but he's not interested in the world.
Well, I asked the question again, why aren't me and you friends? So why aren't we Luciferians? It seems like a good gig.
Well, it's not really, because essentially if you're a Luciferian, then you only care about yourself and you only care about your own enlightenment. You're not really interested in, if you like, the greater good of humanity. And in reality, that is not what we're about. We're supposed to be together as people to help ourselves evolve into being better humans, where neither of these two philosophies is about us being better humans. It's either light with Lucifer or you are a piece of cattle under Ahriman. Neither of these philosophies takes into account that we are humans with souls.
I think you've just given me a really big insight, because I was, as you know, in this court battle that's been going on, which is the old world, like the old newspapers, versus the Guardian, which is the new this new young Prince Harry and all that. That seems to me now, because I thought, hang on, I'm in between two, and I started to, when the Guardian side started to come at me. I mean, not all of them, but there was one guy, and he's pretty much a head honcho in all this. He's very much left, right, left, right, left, right, and he's very like a big speaker for it. Me and he had a little bit of a contretemps, and he came at me attacking me spiritually. Now I thought, hang on, this doesn't make sense, because I thought only the oldie worldy side would be like the ones, because they're obviously linked with Freemasons, yada yada. But I thought, hang on, this new side has got a really dark, nasty spirituality. I felt it coming at me, and through this guy. Okay, they might have been impersonating him, but I felt the weight of it. So this I think you're just giving me a key. I think this is maybe Ahriman versus the Lucifer side, and maybe the Ahriman side wanting to come in and call itself, all left wing, woke, and all that.
Well, I mean, that's essentially Ahriman. Yeah, Ahriman is left wing, woke, etc., etc. Anything that destroys the human spirit, then that's Ahriman. Whereas the opposite is Lucifer, but he's not interested in humanity. So,
which is the Freemasons and all that. I mean, they're selfish.
Freemasons is a complicated story. If you want a real insight into sort of like Luciferianism, then you have to look at Blavatsky. I mean, the secret doctrine is essentially promoting Luciferianism. But the point being is that Blavatsky, well, it's really Blavatskaya, This is really quite, because I live in Russia and I know it's interesting. It's Blavatskaya. But she wasn't stupid. She balanced both sides. Yeah, she balanced what it was to be human and what it also was to be enlightened. I mean, this very much falls into the Hindu idea of the Naga. For example, if you talk to Hindu adepts about the Bible, they always say that the snake in the Bible, who is often referred to as Lucifer and, blah, 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 Satan or whatever, is actually liberating humanity.
Of course, Shiva has Varuna, the snake around his neck that whispers in wisdom.
Yeah, but we're talking about the Naga who enlightened the human to eat the knowledge. Okay,
and the Naga, the Naga. Can you just, for our audience, explain the Naga, what they are?
Right. The Naga are a kind of a snake creature. I mean, if you go to Thailand, they're everywhere. If you go to India, they're actually not so prominent in India, but in Thailand, they're absolutely everywhere. I mean, literally. There's a big Buddha, a massive Buddha, and all the way up to the steps of the Buddha leads the Naga. And this isn't design. This is telling you that if you find the light within, then you will find what is Buddhism. Yeah, because, once again, Buddhism really, a lot of people are going to get angry with me, but really Buddhism is a type of Luciferianism. It doesn't talk about a God. It talks about the light within. And this is very much Luciferianism. And it's also very nihilistic. Yeah, I mean, sort of many people join Buddhism, they sell everything, and they join the Buddhist community, so they are isolated from the rest of the world. That is very Luciferianism. Once you start understanding the philosophy, you can understand the background thinking of a lot of these so-called religions or belief systems. But
what about the Catholics? What are they?
Well, I mean, the Catholics quite interesting, really. I mean, the Catholic. It's a real mishmash of sort of like, of like different religious philosophies. They claim to be Christian. However, I don't know how it can be Christian, because essentially if you understand anything about the time of Jesus, most people were semi-illiterate, if not illiterate. Jesus spoke Aramaic. Now, Aramaic was before the time of Muslim. And essentially, the Aramaic language is all about connectedness and vibration and light. But this doesn't come across in the Bible. It comes across as the church is the leading and all this blah blah blah, where Jesus is promoting, no, you find the heaven within, which is also very Luciferianism. You know, Luciferianism is about finding the light, finding the balance within yourself. Whereas the Catholic Church, call it by its proper name, which is the Roman Catholic Church, essentially it's almost like a military discipline. If we look back, I mean, I would say that the Catholic Church is very similar to the Ahriman philosophy, because if back in the day, if you didn't believe in the Catholic Church, they tortured and burnt you to death. They didn't care about your humanity. They only cared if you believed in the Catholic Church, which has got very strong Ahriman leanings to it. So I would say that the Catholic Church is less Luciferian and more towards Ahriman.
That was so interesting. I'd love to do a part 2, because it's so fascinating. I mean, I really feel like I've been woken up now.
Okay.
I feel less confused. It's like, wow, really? Wow. I mean, so could you come back and do a part 2? And I'm sure people have got lots of questions.
Because we haven't looked at Blavatsky's philosophy on Lucifer, and that's really important because that's very prominent in today. Also,
Excellent.
Gurdjieff as well. Gurdjieff's philosophy on Lucifer is very, very interesting. And of course, the granddaddy of them all was Levi Eliphas, and it's very interesting to get their take on it. But as I said at the beginning of our talk, realistically, I think if you want to learn about Ahriman and Lucifer, then it has to be Steiner, really.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you so much. I mean, that was amazing. So thank you so much. See you next week. Thank you, Brian. That was amazing. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And I'm sure you'll agree that was very enlightening and has opened certainly new doors in my mind. And I certainly feel a lot less confused. So
Brilliant.
Thank you very much. See you next week, and thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you. See you soon. Bye.